experience. You brought something, so it was so
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, I brought this along. I'll tell you two quick stories if we have the
Yeah, sure.
time for it. The latter part of May of 1945, I was asked to go to another landing ship called an LSM, 200 feet long, with an open well exposed to the sky. A good place where you could have oil barrels and whatnot loaded. And I was told to go there and arrange for the unloading of all those barrels and transferring them to another landing craft so they could be taken to the beach to be used ashore. And while I was on that assignment, I was up on the bridge of the LSM, and it was a beautiful day. It was as I said, in May, and a kamikaze plane came in from behind the hills surrounding the harbor that we were in. Wasn't picked up by the radar until it was really on top of us.
Okay.
And there were 3 ships in that harbor. He went to my home ship first and was driven away, went to a merchant ship next and was driven away, and then came directly for where I was standing on the bridge, really on target. I don't know what happened, whether something hit the propeller or the mechanism of the plane, but it did an arc. And the arc was the width of the ship, and it landed about 10 feet off the starboard side of the LSM. Well, when that happened, the captain of the ship, whose name happened to be Darby, D-E-R-B-Y, but pronounced Darby, turned to me and he said, "Luckiest ship in the Navy." And he told me previously that they had been at Iwo Jima, where stuff was falling all over the place, and they got out without a scratch. And that voice saying, luckiest ship in the Navy, stayed with me. About a year or so ago, I decided to find out what happened, because the day after that incident in which I was a party, I heard the number of his LSM mentioned on a radio broadcast. The ship had been hit, and I didn't know what happened as a result. And I found out a year ago that his ship was sunk the following day at Ieshima, which was an island near where we were, and ultimately he was killed in that attack. And I finally resolved that it was closure for me, because I always wondered what had happened. And it had turned out that it was a terrible period, because when his ship was hit, some of the men from that ship had jumped off theirs to rescue people from another ship, and it was a general disaster. And so he wasn't all that fortunate. And I just kept hearing luckiest ship in the Navy, and his number was up. In line with that, this miniature Japanese flag was a souvenir that Japanese soldiers apparently carried with them, with inscriptions of good wishes from their family members, like prayers for their survival. And the poor fellow who carried this one apparently never made it, and someone who had found it in the dirt gave it to me as a souvenir of the island. So this is for some poor guy, enemies then, but allies now, who didn't make it back to home.
So, on a lighter note, you seem to have a lot of, funny stories from the spare time that.
Yeah, we had a few.
So you could share, your favorite.
Well, let's see. Well, I guess the one that occurs to me that was both silly and funny at the same time, almost could have been a sitcom, was an occasion we were at sea for, I don't know, maybe 5-6 weeks, and our commanding officer decided that we had to get some exercise, otherwise we were going to get fat and sassy. So the order went out that all the officers in the unit had to get out there at 2 o'clock that day and get ready for calisthenics, so we'd be in good shape. And those of us who didn't have shorts then went down to the ship store to buy shorts, and after our calisthenics that afternoon, when I got back to where I was changing to go to take a shower, one of my comrades said, "What are you going to do about your shorts?" Because we were all sweated up. I said, "Well, we'll take them in the shower and wash them there." So he said, "You think that'll be all right?" I said, "I'm going to do that. I'm sure it'll be fine." So I did that. He did that. I'm sure a lot of other people did the same thing. Meantime, unbeknownst to him, our unit's doctor had overheard the conversation. So when the shorts were hung up to dry, he took this fellow's shorts and he put a pleat in the back of the shorts, narrowing the waist about 4 inches. Well, the next day he went to get his shorts when they were dry and put them on again to go out and exercise, and they didn't fit. And they were about this far apart at the waist. Well, he had to get out there. So with the shorts half falling off and half on, he went through it. And when we came back, he said to me, "Did your shorts shrink?" I said, "No, mine seemed to stretch." He said, "Stretch? How could that be?" So he starts to take them off, and as he took them off, he saw this tuck in the back of the shorts. He says, "Wait a minute, somebody sewed these." Well, he decided that the most, I guess the least likely to have been the perpetrator was the one who had done it. He was a musicologist from Ohio. He said, "You did it, Grant." I said, "I didn't." He said, "Yo, I know you did it." And the docs finally said, "Look, I did it." He said, "No, you couldn't have done it. He did it." And that went on for maybe a week or two. He wouldn't pass him salt or ketchup or whatever. They were enemies for life, but eventually he calmed down. But it was funny while it lasted, so it seemed.
Right. Any other experiences you want to
Oh,
share?
let me see. I suppose in some ways we missed out during the time that I was at Okinawa. I was there for almost a year, not having any real contact with the people on the island. It was very much a separate kind of thing. They, I guess, were told to stick to their villages and not to get involved with any of the people on the bases. And to that extent, it was a very empty kind of, you were on a rock, you were in the middle of the ocean, and that was it. But other than from a scenic point of view and what we had to be doing, it was an empty, shallow kind of experience. But getting to Shanghai was, among other things, the first time I had worn normal shoes for over a year, and that felt strange and good. But to meet people who had lived through the war years in Shanghai, coming from different backgrounds. Some of them were Jewish refugees from Europe who had ended up there. Some of them were people from other parts of China who, when the Japanese invaded Manchuria, had gone to Shanghai. And this was a whole new world. And I found out that there were kids growing up in places like Harbin in Manchuria or Mukden, who were taking piano lessons and going to Hebrew school or doing whatever they were doing at the same time that I was in the Bronx or Brooklyn trying to lead my simple
A real sense
life.
of the rest of the
So it
world.
gave you a sense of reality in a different part of the world that you would never have dreamt of as being almost a mirror image of what you were living through.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for watching. Watch us next time. Thanks.